Should I tell you a little bit about Satan? That in the court of heaven, Satan is the district attorney. He is not, as Christians imagine, the enemy of heaven and the enemy of mankind. He's merely the person who sees the bad side of things and carries out the dirty work.
Something that I find repulsive about especially monotheistic messianic religion. With a large part of itself, it quite clearly wants us all to die.
A new consciousness is developing which sees the earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed.
Welcome to Deferred Gnosis. We live in a world of gnosis deferred. The primary purpose of Deferred Gnosis is to bring together contrasting perspectives that relentlessly investigate the whys and wherefores most are unwilling to explore.
We will grasp those fleeting eternal truths necessary to liberate us from the shackles of sedentary belief. We will sharpen reason against the whetstone of radical thought.
Welcome to another episode of Deferred Gnosis podcast. We are your hosts. I am Shea, Bilé.
And I am Matt Johnson.
And it is a pleasure to be here once again. We missed all you guys, actually.
It's been a couple of months. There have been, once again, good bounty of feedback and comments. Thank you all for your listens and for your shares and for your commentary.
Yeah, I think there was some good commentary on the artificial intelligence. I kind of moved away a little bit from, we've been talking a lot about religion and spirituality, and, we decided to talk about artificial intelligence because of that sexy AI movie,
Right.
Ex Machina. Yeah, so that kind of, just watching a movie that is titillating in any way sexually would, of course, completely drive the direction of the podcast itself. It takes a while to get to the subjects that we discuss about. I mean, it's grueling, right? I mean,
it's quite a process. Actually, Shea and I, we spend quite a bit of time together. We meet up at least 2-3 times a week and discuss potential topics, prospective topics. We run a couple times a week, and
we do have a physical regiment.
Yeah.
So this is our basic. We never quite discussed this on the podcast before, but this is kind of the.
I want to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse.
Yeah, a little glimpse
behind the stage,
little glimpse of what we do. So we'll meet 2 or 3 times a week, typically Tuesdays, Thursdays, and one other day.
Right.
On most circumstances.
Yeah, either Friday or maybe a Saturday.
And
or Sunday.
It used to be that we, we'll run, and then after our run, because we both live in Long Beach, so we'll run down to the beach, come back, and not get murdered in the process. I'm just kidding. Crime's not that. Crime's the same as anywhere else. And then we will discuss podcastery.
Podcastery, yes.
And
Talk pod.
We recently actually, before we get into our actual thinking process, which is pretty extreme, it can be extreme, we started exchanging our runs for mixed martial arts training.
We've been looking into various dojos and gyms.
Yeah. I don't know. See, I've been, for the last few weeks, I've wanted to say dojo, but I felt
I don't know
that that just doesn't seem right for a lot of the MMA.
It almost seems kind of pretentious, or maybe a little overly Eastern or something.
I try to say school, gym, because I did Krav Maga a few years ago. It's been 3-4 years, so I'm rusty. Maybe
you were in it for the better part of a year, though, weren't you?
Yeah. I got yellow belt. I went a stage up. I leveled up, and it's supposed to be about just a brutal approach to mixed. I wanted to find the most brutal, militant,
kind of street fighting effective.
Street fighting, no rules. I didn't want any
something that'll defend you in a back alley
and hurt someone.
Right.
I'm not trying to hurt people.
You're looking for.
But if you're trying to,
most bang for your buck,
then
bang for your buck.
Exactly.
Self-defense.
So I did that for a year, and then I went out of it. And we came up with a conversation. Said, "Hey, let's
sounds like a good idea. Let's check out some martial arts together."
So we did. So we went to Krav Maga class.
Yep,
that first one.
That's right, in Long Beach.
Yeah,
cool.
It's pricey though. That's the only thing.
It was kind of pricey, but I got
$300 up front, then $150 a month,
and a 12-month commitment. I mean,
That's
you
like
know,
rent. That's like a car payment.
Two out of
Yeah.
these three things maybe, but all three of them I think were kind of the nail in the coffin.
But it had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, and then Krav. Then we went to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, and he was like, Krav Maga is garbage. Then we went to Muay Thai, but it was Chute boxing? What was it called?
Well, yeah, it was in Long Beach, and
That's not a specific name. Chute is actually, I learned that's an actual type of Muay Thai.
Oh, is it really?
I learned that from somebody, yeah. So
Okay.
it was just all cardio.
Well, yeah,
kind of all cardio.
We did some knee work and we did some kicking and stuff and some hopping around, but and we did some ab work
That
too.
sounds silly as hell.
Well,
Like, we did hop around.
we hopped around,
And then did
knee
some
work
kicks.
and kicks. Yeah, I just and the cardio and the ab work was brutal. I was sore for a week after that.
Sure.
But I just felt like I wasn't getting the kind of like fight training that I was expecting out of a martial arts school, And we've only been there once, but it just seems like So I was actually most impressed with the Krav Maga class that we took because we actually spent the entire time.
And the guy checked us.
We spent the entire
He checked us on technique. He checked us on
We spent the
form.
entire time punching and
At the
dodging
other,
and
at
dipping.
the Chute boxing, at the Muay Thai, he was just kind of like,
He was very laid back.
he's like, oh, whatever.
He came and corrected
He was like,
me.
perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. You're doing it perfect.
He came and corrected me a
I've
couple of
never, I
times,
haven't
but,
done this in years. What do you mean I'm doing it perfect?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, perfect.
Right.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't make me feel good. I want to know that you're teaching me something.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
Yeah.
So
So anyway, the hunt is still on. Shea and I are still looking for.
probably check out 3 more classes and probably do that.
Yeah.
So that's something we've been doing.
Right.
But usually followed by what has become our physical exercise.
Usually we'll
'Cause
go
we're
on.
aging gents.
We'll run. Yeah,
We're aging gents.
We're
you
aging.
know?
Want to make sure that we start getting
up to
back.
par.
Yeah, because get back to our normal.
So
selves.
we'll have a bit of libation, and we'll discuss podcast
Yep,
topics.
that's right.
And these usually get pretty heated.
Sometimes it all depends. So what we found out is if we drink just beer, we're usually pretty safe. But a lot of times we'll drink whiskey. And if
I mean, come on. I know you have this theory that if we drink beer and
it's
if
a
we drink whiskey,
it's a hypothesis.
It's a hypothesis, yeah. It's not a theory yet. It hasn't been tested.
Right.
Let's the young Earth creationists like to say, well, it's just evolution's just a theory.
It's just just like gravity.
no. You're right. It's not a
It's a
theory.
theory, just like gravity.
Yeah, it's not a theory quite yet because it hasn't been tested using the scientific method. But your hypothesis that
Evolution is not just evolution.
Yeah.
Evolution is fairly well vetted at this point.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's been Now, I don't want to come to that conclusion that the difference between beer and whiskey totally destroys our ability to whiskey totally.
It's not as though we
But we see a pattern.
Yeah, we see a pattern, and we do have productive and lively conversations either way. But I feel like my hypothesis is that the potency of the whiskey contributes to an
Aggressive,
has an inflammatory
kind of an
effect.
aggro.
Yeah. So anyway,
So eventually in the course of our conversation,
I can only think. I only wonder what my neighbors think. They still say hi to me.
I think you're fucking nuts. They've got to.
Oh, hey, man. So you've had some pretty cool news lately. Actually,
Yeah.
I want you to maybe talk a little bit about the lecture you gave in your world religions class.
Yeah, I'm taking a world religions class, philosophy major. I'm moving to Cal State Long Beach soon.
Fantastic.
I'm really excited about that. So, I had a world religions class, and then I was kind of joking with the teacher. I'm like, well, we're studying Islam, we're studying Judaism, we're studying Christianity. I mean, what about like some of the more smaller
Fringe
radical religions like
yeah.
Scientology or Satanism? And he's like, maybe you can talk about Satanism.
So he at this point knew that you were a Satanist.
Yeah, because in the beginning of class, he almost asked everyone in the class what their religion was.
Oh, interesting.
And when he asked me, I
It's
was
like the thing you would never do at work
boiling
in
with
like
excitement.
a
I'm
committee.
like, please ask me. I'm sitting in class, please ask me
You're like
what my
shuddering,
religion
you
is.
can hardly contain
I'm
yourself.
like, actually, I'm a Satanist.
and the entire class like gasped.
And he's like, really? He's like, really? That's the first time in 23 years. Wow, we have a Satanist in the
that
class.
anyone's ever owned up to it anyway.
And he said do a lecture, and then a few weeks later, towards the end of the class, I did the lecture, and it was fantastic.
Kind of the first expression of what may turn into
was
a career as a professor, hopefully.
I would love to. I'd love to teach
I
religion.
think you're cut out for it. I think you've got it.
I would love to teach the best. I would love to be one of the first Satanists to teach,
Philosophy at
Christianity. Teach a class on Christianity.
Interesting. That'd be great.
I'm like, lesson 1, regression. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Sort of.
No.
I'm sort of.
So another piece of interesting news, Shea. I want to congratulate you on your recent appointment as the Los Angeles chapter head for the Satanic International Network, dude. That's awesome news.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been aware of the Satanic International Network for quite some time. It started as a website, like a forum for Satanists, like all-inclusive Satanists of all sort to kind of meet, gather, interact socially. And it expanded into an organization and then kind of started appointing chapter heads recently. And, Zach Black, who's the head of Sin.
You guys kind of had a conversation recently or doing some vibing and...
Yeah, we had a conversation. We had a back and forth, and he extended the opportunity for me to head the LA chapter,
Fantastic.
being a Long Beach
native,
Long Beach resident, and we're gonna get things started with that. I hope to get a social network presence started for that. So anyone who's satanically inclined, please feel free to contact me. I will have a page up soon, so you can email me directly. And maybe we can start meeting if you're in the LA area. I'm going to start up a meet and greet soon. Details to follow.
Fantastic.
But on the subject, I actually have Zach Black on the line. He's going to talk a little bit more about Satanic International Network, give a little more details. All right, so I have Zach Black on the line, head of Satanic International Network. Zach, how are you, man? How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, no, of course.
Anytime.
So, really quickly, how did Satanic International Network get started? What's the aim of it, and how did it kind of transform into the organization as it stands now?
Sure. Satanic International started off on YouTube in 2009, roughly. Right when I started getting my internet feet wet, I was kind of a late bloomer. And I made a lot of YouTube videos. I got kind of successful with YouTube as far as being my notoriety on YouTube as a Satanist. And, I kind of felt the limitations of YouTube. It was kind of hard to communicate. I felt the need for there to be like a Facebook kind of, but specifically for Satanists. So I created Satanic International Network in 2010. Which is kind of like a social networking site, but it's designed for Satanists, left-hand path practitioners, people that are interested in occult, atheists, agnostics. That's what it's designed for, but it's open to everybody. We mainly just judge you on your intelligence, regardless of your actual philosophy or spiritual or non-spiritual background. And that was pretty successful, and we've been doing that since 2010, and in 2014, started to see the need for there to be an actual, in a real-life organization. Satanic International Network was basically designed to be a networking hub for like-minded individuals so that we could socialize, and Satanic International Network, you can build your profiles. It's basically the same as Facebook, upload videos, upload pics. We have forums, live chat rooms. We have blogs, and a lot of other stuff, meetups and groups so that we can see where everybody's located and meet up. But then I said, okay, let's push this to the next level. Let's do something in real life. And so we created Satanic International Network organization. And we just launched chapters probably a couple of weeks ago all over the United States. We're going to kind of keep it small to work out the unforeseen bumps in the road that are going to come along. And that's basically it. And we're doing gatherings and meetups. Everybody gets to know each other. All across the country, ranging from Los Angeles to New York, from Florida to Portland, Oregon.
Awesome. So I noticed with Satanic International Network, one of the things that distinguishes it from other satanic organizations is its all-inclusiveness. Everything from what they would call LaVeyan Satanists or atheistic Satanists to theistic or to spiritual or to just all forms. It seems like there's a kind of invitation to all forms of Satanism. Would you say that's kind of a unique aspect to sin?
Yes, I would. It's basically, again, we try not to judge based on what label or how you would define your own personal Satanism. Like I would say most of us are more self-styled or modern Satanists, which is what we take a little bit from what we like from each different version of Satanism. I try to be open. I try not to, I'm not a theistic Satanist or a spiritual Satanist, but I won't, and I don't necessarily agree with the philosophical perspective on Satanism, but at the same time, if they're intelligent and they're fairly articulate and they have a point to make, for sure, welcome aboard.
Okay, so some of the movement that's been made recently in the Satanic Temple, for example, some of us may know of the Church of Satan. Recently, we've been hearing of the Satanic Temple a bit, especially with the recent unveiling that happened yesterday in Detroit. What separates the Satanic International organization from these other satanic groups? What would you say kind of distinguishes it from these other satanic organizations?
Well, for one, there's no set hierarchy. There are no high priests, there are no reverends, there are no magisters, no warlocks, no big grand poobah fancy pants titles. We're all just Satanists, we all have roles, but there's no set type hierarchy. Of course, there are, to a lesser degree, a chain of command, but it's not as pretentious and as outlined and defined as, say, like the Church of Satan. That's one major difference. The other is that some other organizations do, some organizations don't. We do a pretty thorough screening process as far as memberships into the actual organization. Now, the network is basically, it's free for everybody, and anybody can use it so long as they don't make a mockery of it or an ass of themselves, or they're to make an ass of other people. Yeah, but as far as the organization goes, I think that's the main difference. The other difference is it's more loosely structured. It's more flexible as far as people's individual beliefs, as far as their own definition of what Satanism is. Whereas most other organizations are a little bit more rigidly defined, where the founders or the powers that be within that organization kind of dictate and determine what their members should or should not follow.
Okay, for sure. So basically, moving forward, you're going to be expanding the chapter heads both nationwide in the United States and internationally in the next few months, I understand. But thank you so much for extending the opportunity for the Los Angeles chapter head. I plan to kind of move forward and get things together on the West Coast side of things, and look forward to seeing Satanic International grow as an organization. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome, guys, and thanks for having me. And again, Shea, being a San Diego chapter myself and you being Los Angeles, I'm sure there'll be quite a few opportunities for us to merge or get together and have chapter meetups for both San Diego and LA, since they're not very far apart. And I look forward to meeting you and the other members that are involved in your chapter.
Definitely. I'm definitely down. Thank you so much, Zach. Have a good night.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep.
Hail Satan. Bye. Excellent. So I'm excited to see how Satanic International Network moves from here. So like I said, things are just getting started, but as you heard Zach Black say, kind of have some plans to expand. So excited about that. Excited to be a part of it. I'm also excited because we're going to have Anagnorisis on a little bit later to interview regarding their recent musical exploits. They're kind of like atmospheric black metal from Louisville. Absolutely love their music. We've played them in previous podcasts, so it's a pleasure to actually speak to them. So to kind of switch focus, the topic at hand, and it's kind of a subject that we've been discussing for some time. It's one that kind of came up in previous conversations.
Episode 3 with Reap Payton when we were discussing secular Satanism. And it has to do, the topic for today, we wanted to expand on that and talk specifically about secular religion.
In general.
In general. As this is a topic that's kind of come up here and there, and we felt like the time had come to give it the main stage and really kind of take this issue apart. And because Shea and I diverge quite a bit. Sometimes we agree on things, other times we disagree, and this happens to be a topic where we're kind of diametrically opposed.
I don't know about diametrically.
Is that a little too extreme, maybe? Okay.
Well, we have different viewpoints, and we do switch on our positions on these subjects, but The reason secular Satanism came up was because of the Satanic Temple, and they've had, if you don't know, they had recent activism creating the Baphomet statue. You can look it up on Google or wherever to kind of figure out their recent exploits.
Very politically active organization.
We brought up secular Satanism because it was an example of secular religion, and we wanted to kind of dive into that because our previous episode was on Satanism itself, according to the Levian canon.
That's right.
Which was more supernaturalist in nature. So we brought on Reet Payton, who's a priest with the Satanic Temple. He also does a podcast. And we brought him on to discuss the idea of secular Satanism. And here's a little clip from that, so we could kind of show what our positions were then, and we can go on and discuss further.
To be religious can merely mean that you take something very seriously and that you do it on
that would be a definition I would embrace a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that for our intents and purposes here, it's kind of a vacuous way to define what religion is, because it's not really, we're not talking about how I wash my hands religiously after using the restroom.
Yeah, no, we're not.
We're not talking. That's not the kind of religion.
So calling secular humanism a religion, we understand why.
Right. I mean, if we can, based on that definition, we can call secular atheism or secular humanism a religion, and
feminism a religion.
Well, but I think that's a confusing way to use the word, and I don't think that's what we
There's
really.
a lot of words that are confusing though because the definitions haven't caught up yet.
So that clip was from episode 3. You can hear Reet Payton. We had him on the line. It was a fabulous discussion. And in that clip, I express my, I won't say strident, but, very active position that a religion, secularity, in my opinion, is at strong odds with religion.
Religion itself, as a term.
Religion itself. Now, and in that clip, Shea, it seemed like at the time you kind of agreed, but you did offer some caveats. It wasn't like a total agreement.
To be fair,
seems like these days you may have some different ideas.
You heard in the audio, I say it's a contradiction in terms,
right?
And I change my beliefs. I have the ability to be converted in the sense that. I think Robert Anton Wilson once said that beliefs are the end of intelligence or something along those lines.
So kind of taking something on dogmatically and not being flexible and not not coming to further evidence.
So, and we kind of discussed it earlier, but having studied religions in general, I see that there is many examples of secular religion that exist. So I'm kind of counter. I've kind of changed my view towards the subject since we did that particular
and that's
podcast.
A fantastic ability to have. I just want to stress the point that there's nothing wrong with having flexibility and the ability to change one's position based off of new evidence or based off of new things that someone has learned. I think that's you must be able to do that in order to foster a broader knowledgeability. So, I'd like to take the time to kind of congratulate you on that and say,
of course,
I respect that ability. And I have that ability myself. I'm, as you said, willing to be converted. So, that's a great place. That's a great place to start.
The inability to be converted is the end of all knowledge. It's the beginning of extreme of cynicism.
It's the end of all knowledge and the beginning of pure dogma. You take things on board that
both believer and non-believer.
Right.
Actually,
certainly. Yes, it goes both ways. It's not merely in the camp of those who are mystics and so on. So you can be a dogmatic atheist. You can be a dogmatic secularist or a dogmatic anything.
Oh, it's good it's good you actually put out that point.
Yes.
Because that's going to play a bit later into our discussion.
As you steamroll me later in the conversation, you mean.
The idea of dogmatism amongst those who are even secular or atheistic in nature.
Oh, certainly it happens. It's not merely the purview of those believers.
So do you still hold by your view? I mean, I said that I might have changed my view a little bit from the recording of that podcast. Have you changed your view on what you believe religion is?
No.
The definition of religion.
At this point...
You believe it's synonymous with supernaturalism.
Yeah, my position, I still hold the same position as I did in episode 3 and as I've expressed in other episodes kind of since. Where I think that mysticism and supernatural beliefs are at odds with what we would call secularity. And but more importantly, I think that mysticism and supernatural beliefs are hand in hand with what it takes to be religious. I think in order to have a religion, or in order to have religious beliefs, what that effectually means, at this point in the conversation, I think means to have on board some ideas that are beyond mere evidence and that extend into the supernatural.
So in some more recent investigations or studies of world religion, especially in somewhat modern cases, you see examples where humanism is one of the biggest examples, has been considered a religion.
Yeah, like the Supreme Court recently acknowledged secular humanism as a religion. I mean, this comes from the Supreme Court.
Because somebody, a federal prisoner, wanted to start a humanist studies group.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And
yeah.
they ruled in his favor,
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that for these purposes, secular humanism is a religion.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this isn't the only instance where the courts have ruled that secular humanism and its many subsects have been considered a religion.
That's right. This kind of happened in like the 60s, the early 60s.
This has happened.
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
Throughout the 20th century and 21st century.
So we see examples where humanism in many forms has been considered a religion, and I think to first kind of get into the discussion, we have to look at what religion, various definitions of religion.
Sure.
I mean, besides like the examples of different groups or cults, and besides the Supreme Court rulings, let's look at some of the definitions. I was going to go into a group called the Ethical Culture Movement.
Sure.
This is actually quoted in one of the Supreme Court rulings that we're going to go into. Felix Adler, he's a Reformed rabbi.
Wow.
And in the mid-1800s, he started what would be the ethical culture movement. And he went on to kind of define religion as the following. Religion is that set of beliefs and or institutions, behaviors and emotions which bind human beings to something beyond their individual selves and foster in its adherents a sense of humility and gratitude that, in turn, sets the tone of one's worldview and requires certain behavioral dispositions relative to that which transcends personal interests. So kind of vague, and this isn't like, I hate to call it vague, but I mean, it's not completely...
Well, it's a very open definition of religion, and very contrary to my, I'm comparatively narrow. I mean, I'm taking on board what is, clearly a fairly narrow view of religion, a definition of religion. I'm contending that you need to have mysticism or some spirituality or some supernatural belief in order to be called religion. Now, so this guy's coming about, and the way he's saying it, the way this guy is saying it, he's saying he's not making any mention of superpower. He's not mentioning anything of supernatural significance. He's just saying...
beyond their individual selves.
Anything, any very important thing that binds you to other people beyond your individual self. Now, I want to step back just a little bit, and I want to talk about the most recent case of the Supreme Court granting secular humanism as a religion. So, as you mentioned, this case revolves around a guy in prison, and he wanted to have a religious study group. Now, in the confining atmosphere of the prison, you apparently can't have this kind of a study group unless it's acknowledged as a religion. I think this is fairly important because we have to look at the motives behind this definition. And I want to talk a little bit later about how Supreme Court rulings on this topic and the definition of religion may not be a reliable source. But first, let's think about the motives. Okay, this guy, this prisoner, wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in redefining religion per se. He merely wanted a study group. He just wanted a place, a common place for people to have a study group on secular matters, secular humanism.
What is sometimes called the free exercise clause. So the ability to
This is a perfectly poignant point, actually.
with equivalents be able to represent various groups, and sometimes it's necessary to define them as a religion.
Yes.
In order to get equal rights.
Exactly.
I understand that argument.
So what happens is we take what's basically a civil rights issue and it becomes in the canon of the definition of religion, which I think is a fallacy.
That's a fair argument when you take that federal, the case of the federal prisoner and that American Humanist Association scenario. But that's historically, that's not the actual whole story. You are definitely taking a very specific event. And yeah, you can extrapolate that to mean that secular humanism is only made a religion for purposes of this court ruling to give a free exercise clause. But
for civil rights purposes, for the purposes, which, I guess I'm okay with. I think academically and epistemologically, I don't think it's accurate. But I understand, and I want to expand a little bit. This speaks very well to why Supreme Court rulings are not the most reliable source for how we define religion. Because, remember, the Supreme Court has to consult the Constitution in its definition. And like perfectly, as you said, it has to appeal to the First Amendment. So the problem is with Supreme Court rulings is that they have to appeal in such a way that they're non-discriminatory and that they're also not establishing or favoring any religion. And the trouble with that is they have to be so broad in their definitions as to be effectively useless. That's my contention on Supreme Court rulings, and that's why I don't think they're a good place to go in defense of religion as being able to be secular.
Well, let's go over the examples then. Since you want to stick to the Supreme Court rulings or any court rulings that have been made, let's go to the examples of them. So the first instance, and this is quoted quite regularly. One of the first instances of secular humanism, not the first actually, but one of the instances that is most referenced for secular humanism representing a religion is the case of Torcaso versus Watkins, 1961. So Notary Public was being requested, requested to kind of admit a belief in a higher power. A belief in God Almighty before he can take public office.
So he's actually, I think, so he's a notary public, and he's appointed the position, but he has to have a commission to do the work as a notary.
That is a prerequisite.
Right.
You have to,
and the prerequisite is you have to acknowledge your belief in God.
Yes.
In order to be commissioned.
And he took it to the Supreme Court, and they voted in his favor. They ruled in his favor. And in Justice Hugo Black, in his ruling, he said the following. This is footnote 11. He had a footnote in his ruling, and it says the following: among religions in this country which do not teach what would generally be considered a belief in the existence of God are Buddhism, Taoism, ethical culture, secular humanism, and others. And he cited a few cases to go along with that. So he cited a few. Secular humanism, he kind of described as a religion and ethical culture. Now, a Supreme Court ruling actually took place 4 years before that. That was Washington Ethical Society versus the District of Columbia, 1957. In that, the Ethical Society, one of the sects of ethical culture movement, was applying for tax exemption as a religious organization. They were granted that ruling because they were saying that a kind of a belief or a teaching of a supreme being cannot be the identifying feature of a religion and therefore tax exemption. And the ethical culture movement actually goes back to the mid-1800s. It's existed, I mentioned Phoenix Adler. He was a former rabbi, and he created a kind of religion built around some of the following ideas: the belief that morality is independent of theology, the kind of a kind of dissection or removal from traditional theology as a part of religion. And this still exists to this day. The ethical culture movement. We actually, looking into it, I want to play a clip from a video from the ethical culture movement. And so you guys can kind of hear for yourselves. They were asked, is it a religion? This is something that has existed for the past 150 years. So there's a culture of secular humanism or secular atheism as a religion.
Now, I do in a moment want to go back to our discussion on the 1961 court ruling, but I just want to say about this clip that we're going to play for you here. You can't see it in the podcast because it's all audio, but you can see. This is against my side, but you can see the religiosity in these people's eyes. I mean,
they're bright-eyed.
It's conviction.
These
like people
when you
are
ask,
glowing, man.
Sure.
These are glowing secular religionists. You can see the beaming in their eyes.
It's the same thing when you ask when they go to some of the Christian groups or the Tea Party, and
some of you might know what we're talking about.
They ask about the belief in Jesus and everything like that.
It's boiling
they start getting
enthusiasm.
watery. They start getting watery-eyed, and these guys show the same. They all seem awkward as hell.
So just keep this image in mind as you listen to this clip, and then we'll play the clip.
This is when they're asked, do you feel that ethical culture is your religion? And this is what they say.
Okay, thank you.
Ethical humanism is my religion, and it is a religion to me because it's a dedication to the things that I think are most high and valuable to me, and that is a dedication to the welfare of human beings.
The word religion comes from the same root that ligament comes from. Legare. Relegare is to reconnect. And my religion, my ethical religion, connects me to my friends, to my family, to the people I work with, to people I meet every day of my life. And the ethical aspect of my religion guides me in every interaction. It supplies the meaning, the purpose, and the reason for living the good life.
Yeah, it's my religion now. Yeah, I was raised Catholic, and I really didn't want my son to be raised Catholic, and now it's my religion. So the way that I act, that I try to behave, and I try to pass to him what is life, what is for him to make good choices. This is life. Yeah.
So you can see that most of them. And you can almost hear some of the awkwardness in what they're saying too. But
I think that
some of them kind of say
this awkwardness is originating from a severe case of cognitive dissonance. I think is what's going on. It would be my prescription.
Well, we have a long tradition of that. I mean, you want to say there's a long tradition of cognitive dissonance, but in their eyes, their view of their humanistic views, their views towards kind of progressive, anthropocentric ideas, the idea of uplifting human life and things like that. They take it to a spiritual level. And some of them deferred from wanting to call it a religion. Some of them
they were soft. A couple
but
of
some
them,
of them were dead. Well, it is my religion.
The vast majority of them were very strong in that it was their religion. A couple outliers were kind of soft in that proclamation. So here's an important distinction, and actually ethical culture is a very powerful example for what a religion might look like in secular form. Even though I still maintain that this is an oxymoron, a misnomer. But here's the thing. We need to make a quick distinction between something like ethical culture and mere dyed-in-the-wool atheism. Okay, because atheism is very simple. There's nothing to atheism except for a lack of belief in gods. There's clearly no culture in atheism. There's clearly no binding social strata in atheism. Being an atheist, saying that you're an atheist says one thing and one thing only about you. It says merely that you don't believe in any gods. That's it. And as Shea and I discussed in previous episodes, you can still be... You can still be pantheistic atheist, you can still be spiritual atheist. Sure. Okay, so let's hold on a moment. So let's distinguish that from something like ethical culture. Now, these guys in ethical culture have all of the social trappings and cultural influence and binding social human stuff that normal religions do, except that it's totally... secular in nature. In other words, there's no belief in transcendent experiences or transcendent worlds or supernatural beings or supernatural powers.
Okay, sure.
So here's the thing. It has many of the aspects of traditional religion, except for this one thing, which I still believe is integral with what it means to actually
Fair
be religious.
enough. Besides your own personal view, I don't see you providing much of a foundation beyond that. But let's go to the actual etymology of the word religion. Comes from religar, which means to bind together, to bring together groups of people. Let's look at the academic. Now, I'm not just speaking from a mystical standpoint. Yeah, you can throw them off aside as a singular example, but let's look at Paul Tillich, who is often regarded as the academic or the scholarly opinion or definition of religion. He says, religious is the state of being grasped by an ultimate concern. Human beings, Tillich stated, possess many concerns, some of which are spiritual in nature, cognitive, aesthetic, moral, and political concerns are among those that become urgent and are elevated to the level of ultimacy. When a concern is given ultimacy, it takes an essentially religious character. So, and I can give many more examples where religion is seen as the idea of ultimate concern. Now, with ethical culture and many other movements, by the way, going back to the mid to late 18th century, in the Enlightenment period, there was a move towards deism, there was a move towards atheism, there was a move towards humanism, and we have a history of that. So you have the Supreme Court ruling, you have academic and scholarly definition of religion, giving the room for there to be a secular religion, so long as they have a binding symbolism.
I think we've already addressed the Supreme Court issue, and I think that we understand the context in which the Supreme Court has to be lenient on this matter in a way that isn't necessarily academically satisfying. I mean, it has to be, the Supreme Court has to be civil and socially lenient on the definition of religion as to not be discriminatory towards a broad range of the populace. I don't think that gives it the merit to go making a serious academic definition of what religion is.
Well, there's multiple examples. There isn't just the Supreme Court ruling. There's the Fellowship of Humanity in Alameda in 1957 was granted tax exemption as humanists. In 1965, a member of the military was given in U.S. versus Seeger, conscientious objection purposes. The idea of a supreme being was co-opted to mean the God, humanity itself. The belief in humanity itself was God. His secular humanism was used to replace religion. So we have multiple cases, and you can try to dissect all of those, and you can try to say that every court ruling was used for that purposes. But we see multiple times where not only has the Supreme Court or court rulings ruled in the favor that humanism, ethical culture, secular humanism, both going back 50, 60 years till now has ruled that these are religions. You can argue the reasons for doing that, but they themselves have argued that these are religions. Humanism itself, religious humanism is a thing. It's a thing that's existed for 150 years. You have temples that were...
Which is not to be conflated with secular humanism, by the way. I mean, religious humanism is one thing, and secular humanism is another thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
No, it's not. Religious humanism is secular, it has had some subtle, maybe going back to the mid-1800s, but we have an example where Auguste Comte, a positivist, that is an empiricist, created what's called the religion of humanity. And he instituted kind of a belief system that he established temples. He established liturgy, a priesthood. There is various temples going so far as Brazil to in Europe. And they had, like I said, a priesthood. They were doing marriages. They had a complete religious tenets and doctrines. And this was based on positivism, a philosophy of empiricism, a science-based idea of religion. And this is going back to the this is going back to 1851, where the sacraments of humanity were established by Auguste Comte. And this was something that gained a little bit of ground. And humanism, it didn't exactly catch ground, this full religious this full religious embodiment took place, but it led on to what would become the secular humanist movement, and religious humanists still exist to this day. So you have not only the Supreme Court ruling in favor of secular humanism as a religion and humanists of different forms as a religion, but you have they themselves identifying as a religion.
We've already addressed Supreme Court rulings and how they may not be satisfactory for our purposes. I mean,
well, I disagree on your broad stroke that you counted all the court rulings.
We have to understand the context from which these Supreme Court rulings must take place, and they must take place from a non-discriminatory position, given the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. These guys, the Supreme Court, their goal is not to establish an academic definition of what religion is. Their goal is to ensure that civil liberties of the population are not being trespassed. So, and that's the sense in which I feel like these Supreme Court rulings are kind of a watery source for coming to agreement about what religion is. Now, I want to go back. You mentioned tax exemption, and I want to go back a little bit and talk about that and expand on that a little bit. Now, tax exemption for religious organizations is handled under IRC Section 501c3. And this is the same tax exemption status that's granted to educational organizations, scientific organizations, charitable organizations, and religious organizations. All of these different breeds of organizations are handled under the same tax code under the IRS. So the fact of being granted tax exemption does not necessarily mean that you're a religious organization. I mean, you could very well just be a charitable organization or an educational organization or even a scientific organization for that matter. In fact, the Reason Project, as headed by Sam Harris, is under this very same tax code that all of these churches in the United States are under. So that in and of itself, tax exemption in the sense that we're talking about for religious organizations is also
tax exemption does not a religion make is what you're saying.
Exactly.
And that's fine.
So Supreme Court definition and tax exemption do not a religion make.
Even if
that's my contention. That's what I'm contending.
And it's shaky at best. Even if I gave
I don't know if it's shaky at best.
Well, even if I gave that to you, even if you said all of these court rulings all of
these tax exemptions
were just to give equal ground based on the mainstream religions that were given equal.
You can't be discriminatory. The Supreme Court can't be discriminatory.
You still have the scholarly and academic definitions of religion, world religions professors, people who have studied these things. You still have these adherents themselves. You still have examples going back as far as the French Revolution. For what I can tell, you had things going back as far as like the Cult of Reason in France in the late 1700s, who were kind of they're going through a process of radical de-Christianization. They were replacing the Virgin Mary with Lady Liberty. They were doing what was called the Festival of Reason, where they had
kind of a Festivus for the rest of us. Is that kind of like
well, what they're doing instead of giving into idolatry and worship, they were having women identify as the goddess of liberty, like women, so that they wouldn't give that.
And this is a religious movement in your view.
They weren't giving that.
This is in your view a religious movement.
So they weren't giving the adoration.
This in France that you're talking about is a religious movement?
Well, they have religious ceremonies. They have a form of worship.
Worship to who? Worship to what?
Well, freedom, reason.
Worship to freedom and reason. So I mean, it's kind of analogous to the ethical culture, right? I mean, here you have a group of people who are not espousing to supernatural things or to otherworldly gods, but they have this social cohesion. They have this cultural connection to one another.
Fits into the definition of religion.
Absolutely.
And on definitions, if we talk about secular,
we're not at odds here. Hold on. Certainly these are meaningful aspects of what it means to be religious. I mean, having these connections, these cultural connections, these societal connections, this understanding of common modes of behavior, acceptable modes of behavior, all of this stuff does come part and parcel of what it means to be religious. But I think that these movements are inherently secular. They're not. They're of this world. These movements are concerned with things that are of this planet, on the earth. With one another, other people, with the planet itself. They're concerned with things. The environment, with treating charitably your fellow human being. These are all well-to-do, upstanding, higher thinking, high-minded goals to have. And they do share, these movements are sharing a lot of the meat that comes with religious cohesion. But they're still not religious. They're not religious in nature. They're secular in nature. They're secular, which is to say that they're not supernatural. They're not appealing to...
No, they're not.
They're not appealing to mysticism.
But I don't understand where your argument is coming from that they're not religious or they can't be considered a religion because they lack supernaturalism and they lack a theistic foundation.
That's a very fair point. That's actually...
I mean, where are you getting that... what are are you basing it on? You're basing it on mainstream religion.
Yeah.
You're basing it on history,
a
maybe,
couple
historicity.
A couple of definitions, whatever. A couple of like Google definitions, Webster definitions.
A few.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, fair enough. I understand your contention, but here's the thing, and really, what my motivation in this argument, what enervates me to debate this topic.
To want to disambiguate these things.
What enervates me to want to disambiguate on this topic is actually a sense of fairness for all of the parties involved. Because here's what happens. If we take on, and this is opinion, this is not fact. I mean, this is my opinion, and so take it for what it's worth. If we take on a definition of religion which... as Tillich would like us to take on. If we accept the position of Tillich and the definition of religion, then what happens is we essentially, and I said this in episode 3, we essentially vacuate the meaning of the word religious, because now I can come to you and say any number of things that mean a lot to me, that have supreme significance to me, that just this is of utmost importance to me. And I base my life around it, and therefore it's religious. And, that sounds like we're being ecumenical, and it sounds like we're being fair and well and good, right? But the problem is, we can now come and say anything. We can now come and say, the fact that I brush my teeth in the morning.
No, you can't.
Despite being...
No.
Okay, so where's that difference?
Because that's not ultimate concern. Ultimate concern.
I can get a group of people together and say our ultimate concern, and you and by the way, the Supreme Court would say we can't get into the business of defining what ultimate concern is. We're not in the business of saying. So I could establish a church, get a group of people together, because now I have this social cohesion, this cultural connection with a group of like-minded people who think the same way that I do, that we're very fucking serious about brushing our teeth, and we're so serious that we're religious about it, and we meet on it once a week, and therefore we deserve 503c tax exemption status.
Or 501c, yeah.
C3, 501c3 tax. And then by your reasoning, by your logic, there's no impetus to come at me and attack that position. But of course, that's absurd. From my opinion, that's an absurd position to have. That's my contention.
Well, you just can't give an extreme example of heterodoxy and expect that that's going to hold water against these other groups, which hold the ideas of humanism. The entire history of humanism, movements such as Syntheism, philosophers. These have been professors of philosophy and religion who've come to the idea that religion simply means to bring together people with the idea of ultimacy. Yeah, you can come up with this extreme example that brushing your teeth is considered a religion.
That's no different than, yes, and it's an extreme and perhaps juvenile example, okay? But I'm doing that on purpose to illustrate the point of why this is a problem. It's a problem because we want to have a serious understanding of what the word religious means, and we don't want to do injustice to religious people. We don't want to do injustice to people like you who are actually religious Satanists, and then we have groups out there who are essentially secular in nature pretending to be Satanists. I think that's blasphemy. I think it's unrespectable. I think it's a mockery. It turns these terms into an ambiguous and academic mockery of their actual definition. We can have no clear conversation if we come and say this group of people who's serious about brushing their teeth is fucking religious. That's nonsense. Pure bullocks.
What's happening is you're coming to a position for someone who likens themselves to holding up reason to its highest authority and
reason and
empirical
clarity,
evidence.
Clarity of understanding,
Got
clarity
it.
in terms.
Secular atheist, empirical evidence, science, materialism. For someone who holds that cutting-edge reason is his highest law, it's interesting that for the definition of religion, you would appeal to the age-old definitions that have been established by Christians, that have been established by Islam, that has been established by Catholicism and everything else. Their definition of religion.
Established by the religious people.
So you're taking on the definition that has existed for the past 5,000 years.
Well, Webster's
going
agrees.
back to primitive.
Webster's and Google agree. I mean,
well, there's several definitions that come with Webster and
yeah, but
Google doesn't agree. When you say Google, you mean
what is the top one? What is the top? The first and foremost definition. The first and foremost definition is one that says, supernatural belief. Essentially, belief in an otherworldly God.
Do you want me to go? Do you want me to go further on the actual?
Actually, I'd like to
on the actual academic sources for the definition of religion, or do you want to rely on Google's Webster Dictionary definition? Which one do you feel like is a more sound definition of the religion?
I'm happy to.
You want to appeal
hold on a moment.
to unevolved beliefs of what terms mean. Terms change all the time. Alchemy became chemistry. Astrology became astronomy.
Right.
Religion and it changes with the time. So it changes with our modern society.
Of course it does. And when alchemy became chemistry, we no longer called it alchemy. We called it chemistry. Alchemy still means what alchemy meant. Chemistry means something else, which is not the same as alchemy.
You mentioned that secular means of the world, worldly.
Yes, down to earth, not terrestrial.
And so, what is wrong with religion evolving? Going back, and we have a tradition of this going back 200 years. What's wrong?
Can you just acknowledge,
or maybe even further, what's wrong with religion evolving to mean of this world, to being of this world and changing with the times?
Because we have to call it something else. Just like when alchemy became chemistry, we gave it a new name.
So when atheists,
now let's go to your academic definitions. I want to hear this academic. I want to go after that. I want to go back to secular humanism and the most recent Supreme Court decision.
What about it?
Yeah, so there's an irony.
So they used it so they can have a study group.
Yeah.
In the prison. Got it.
Right. Now,
free exercise clause.
Depending on who you talk to in the secular humanism community, Tom Flynn is the executive director of the Council for Secular Humanism. And he rejects defining secular humanism as a religion. Now, this isn't
many people.
This isn't some small pundit. This isn't, this guy. He's done a lot of serious thinking. He's a rather serious, academic on the point. The director of the Council for Secular Humanism, and he goes into great detail rejecting why secular humanism is not a religion, and that's kind of the canon I'm coming from. I mean, and again, it all comes down to fairness. It all comes down to giving everybody a fair shot at the
if you want to have an intellectual pissing contest, I can go on many examples of people from different religions. Unitarian Universalist. I've known many pagans and Satanists who've received clergy or priesthood or the right to marry others through the Unitarian Universalist Life Church because it allows you. It's one of the well-known here in the United States. It's one of the organizations that allows you to have whatever beliefs you want. You could be a secular atheist and be a part of their community. They meet once a week. They discuss ideas. It's not required that you have a belief in a God or a supreme being. One of the reverends of this church, Dr. William Schultz, activist. He's well regarded in the Unitarian Universal Life Church. He defined their beliefs as we believe human beings are responsible for the future, the history is in our hands, not those of an angry God or an inexorable fate.
These are secular beliefs, by the way.
We believe that life's blessings are available to everyone, not just those who can recite a certain catechism, once again, criticism of religion in general. And we believe that those blessings are made manifest to us not just in the miraculous, with quotes, or extraordinary, but in the simple pleasures of the everyday. This is secular stuff. This is secular atheism. This is secular atheism.
Yes. Under the guise
and this
of
is
Unitarian Universalism.
This is right there on their website. This is right there quoted right in the middle of it when it under the example, can atheists or agnostics be be a Unitarian Universalist.
Right.
And this is at its core a Christian organization.
Well,
So this is an example of secular
I would strongly disagree with that contention. It's not a Christian organization, and it's not a religion.
Okay, so you're gonna take.
Again, we have to parse this cultural cohesion and social bonding.
We're gonna have to parse people who identify these as religion. We're gonna have to parse the people themselves.
They're calling them
who have assembled these organizations throughout history. As and there's examples, Matt.
Well,
there's examples of people.
Here's what I'm saying. If we allow these people to call what they're doing religious, then you can't stop my toothbrushing brigade. On what grounds are you going to stop my toothbrushing brigade if you allow that to be called a religion?
Because it hasn't been done.
Give me a week.
Because it hasn't been done.
Give me a week, dude.
I mean,
Come on, man.
would you say, I mean, let's take an example in history, something that is not really religious in nature at all. But if you take the Third Reich, if you take Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s, you have collective symbolism. You have a prophet. You have someone that was relegated to, it would be hard to say anything outside of godhood. And how is this different than people following the prophets? In fact, the prophets of the Bible, or any other religious scripture or biblical scripture from any of the mainstream religions, would wish they had as many followers as Hitler had. I mean, he had a regime that trumped
number of followers.
Every enactment
number of followers
fervor.
Also does not a religion make. Mere popularity is not.
Well, you have shared symbolism. This all falls into the academic definitions of religion. You have shared symbolism. Yeah. You have the idea of a prophet almost.
Right.
You have the idea of worship almost.
There are certainly elements of extolation and worship.
This is ultimate concern. It's just your toothbrush idea. It almost makes fun of the advancement or the idea, the room for evolution of religion to become something else. You are shitting on academics. You're shitting on sociologists. You're shitting on religious professors who are advancing the definition of religion.
Okay, I'm not shitting on any particular person. Let's clear that up right away. This is not a personal attack on any particular.
It's very broad shitting that you're taking. It's a broad shitting all over.
Well, sometimes shit sprays. We can all relate, right? I mean, sometimes just an explosive.
Well, as soon as you
sort
flush,
of occasion,
right?
Yeah. Your shit wouldn't even flush earlier today. This fucking studio. The water pressure was so poor.
Oh, you're gonna call me out like that?
Well, I'm just saying.
You call me out like that?
It had nothing to do with your turd as much as it did with the poor water pressure in the studio.
Well, if that's a metaphor for our conversation, it's lost on me, brother.
Oh, God. Okay.
It's just that we're seeing examples where philosophers, sociologists, professors of religion, professors of different sorts, scholarly definitions. You're seeing examples where Supreme Court rulings were made, and you argue against those.
We've already discussed
multiple groups, recent groups.
And let me clarify your third point. So we've discussed court rulings and we've discussed tax exemption. I feel like we've addressed those fairly well. The third, you're talking about sociologists and academics and people that this is an appeal to authority. It's a logical fallacy to say that
an appeal to authority. To say that factual, basing on people who represent. These are people who are academics. These are people. This is relying on facts. This is relying on definitions by experts. You're saying that's an appeal to authority?
Yes, it's an appeal to authority.
I think you're misusing that fallacy in my argument. I think you're stretching. I think you're making an attempt to stretch because there isn't a lot of foundation to describing religion as appealing to a spiritual source second to Christianity. Your understanding of the word religion comes from Christianity. It comes from Abrahamic religion, and it doesn't come from anywhere else. That's where it's not with the times. You have a very antiquated view of what religion means. You have a very antiquated view of what God means. And that's why there's recent groups coming up all over. That's why, you mentioned the Satanic Temple, which is describe themselves as a secular...
Which we've discussed in the past, and which I still firmly disagree with, given...
Secular atheist, so not a religion, not Satanism.
Yeah, secular Satanist is not a religion, and secular atheism is not a religion, and ethical culture is not a religion. No, none of these meet the criteria for what a religion is. And
Based upon
a functional understanding of the term. Again, if we
functional
vacate,
understanding of the term.
right? Because otherwise, what happens?
What is defining this
okay.
term? What is your where are you getting that this definition comes from?
Well,
because you can't go beyond mainstream religion to define your understanding of the term.
Well, mainstream religion has got to be our greatest canon in this case, right? I mean, we're not going to appeal to the fringe and say that they have the canon. No, the fringe doesn't have the canon. The mainstream has the canon.
Well, I'm not going to appeal to the populace. What's that? There's also another fallacy that has to do with the populace, right? What's the term? Can you remember it?
All I'm saying
we can't appeal to the populace to define.
Here's the problem.
A definition either.
The problem is with what you would like to implement, or with your understanding of the term religion.
Yeah.
We may as well just call it a philosophy. We may as well just say it's a life guide. It's a life guiding ideology. It's an ideology. So,
it is a philosophy, but
if religion becomes synonymous with ideology, if it becomes synonymous with mere philosophy or mere life guide, then why even have the term? Why even have the term?
Because it's not just that. You haven't been listening to everything I've said.
I understand the cultural cohesion. I understand the social binding. Yeah, but these are all things that you can have
symbolism
outside. These are all things that you can have outside
symbolism,
of religious context.
There's ritual. There's ceremony. There's sometimes dogma. There's regular meetings. There's organization. There's agreed upon metaphors. There's a sense of ultimacy. There's a sense of ultimate concern, and philosophy doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean a cohesive group of people meeting together with a shared symbolism. There's no binding together. Religare. There's no binding together
community.
With a philosophy.
Okay, fine. Then it's synonymous with community.
A community is not going to necessarily have shared belief. A community is not necessarily going to have shared symbolism. A community is not going to necessarily have shared dogma. It's not going to necessarily have shared ritual or ceremony.
Okay, tribes.
Or any of those things.
It's synonymous with tribe, then. It's tribalism.
And even then, there's disagreement on that. Depends on the making of the tribe. Now, if we're talking about primitive religion, yes, they had shared symbolism. They had shared religious belief.
I'm of a tribe. We believe this. We have these codes of conduct. We don't have any supernaturalism or mysticism, but we all abide by this code of conduct. And if you don't, then we cut your head off. That's a tribe. That's a community. That's a community.
Oh, so they're all cutting heads off now.
Well, no. I'm just saying.
What is that?
Oh, it's colorful illustration. Come on, give me a break.
So. There's a recent movement that came abroad, and we're probably going to discuss this in a later episode, but the idea of Syntheism, or comes from Syntheos, the idea of the created God. It's a kind of idea of trans-theistic. So it's the belief that the classical division between theism and atheism and theology has become redundant and must be overcome to accommodate the contemporary and current understanding of spiritual fulfillment and spiritual needs. So, it transcends this idea of God existing, not existing. It's this idea that gods are man-made, so atheistic, secular atheistic.
Yeah, I think that Syntheism in this context is a reaction to the natural secularization of people as they grow more informed and intelligent and knowledgeable. And so it wants to foster this kind of social binding and culturalism. And in response to the reaction of people growing more knowledged and more in tune with the way things actually are.
So I want your
it's trying to fill the space of religiosity in the same way that ethical culture is.
Nothing wrong with that. It's perfect. I think.
Well, except for the fact that it's perverting the name religion.
Oh yeah, spoken like a true Christian. So Alexander Bard.
Excuse me.
Alexander Bard,
that's an insult. Can you take that back? Excuse me.
All right, fair enough. Come on. So there's Alexander Bard, who is one of the primary spokespersons of Syntheism. He had this to say about God, and I want your opinion on this. To me, the name God is an amazing name for all the dreams of humanity projected into one point. What would you name that? You would name it God. And that is what we need to do, to retake the God word, but just give God proper qualities that we can actually believe in. In that case, Syntheos is the God that we choose to believe in and can believe in, whatever that means.
Well, there's this idea that we can there's so many different dreams going on in the human context. I mean, how do you unify? There is no unified dream. There is no unified dream in the human spectrum. Name one. World peace?
It was a metaphor. So what? So poetic language escapes you.
Well, religion is inherently divisive.
I say if you take all consciousness and all dreams and you compress it to a single point, a singularity, what would you call that? We have no other word for that but God. That's what he's saying. I'm calling that God because there's no other example of that. What is that? What that's to say is that ultimacy, as Tillich kind of reference.
There is no unification of dreams and consciousness in this fashion. I don't know what we're talking about. There's no unification of dreams and consciousness on this planet for human beings. I mean, some people want different things than other people. There's no unification. I don't know what we're talking about here.
So you're denying. You're not even allowing yourself. Can
you give me a description of what that might look like?
So let's give some background. We might go into this, like I said, we might go into this deeper in another episode, but the idea that the internet, which is arguably the collective kind of gathering or the collective point of beliefs, thoughts, impressions, aspirations, inspirations, opinions, beliefs, that idea, if you take the internet as this one entity that combines the entire, point of consciousness, or if you were to take all consciousness on the earth and select one point of common conjecture, it would be the internet. It would be the created God, which is the created God.
The point of common conjecture does not exist. The point of common conjecture does not.
So you're saying there's no zeitgeist? You're saying there's no the zeitgeist doesn't exist?
The variation, the varied nature of the internet is as broad and divisive as the religions we've come up with hitherto. And it's as broad and divisive as our tribal human nature is expanded over the global population. I mean, there is no unified conjecture. There's no singular point that says, yes, everybody agrees with, here we are. This is the common grounds of all humanity. There's no singular point of common grounds of all humanity.
I must appeal to...
Tell me what that must look like.
Okay,
Why don't you tell me what that must look like then?
I used to appeal to an image when I was younger. And people would ask me, do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? And at a young age, I was a Satanist in my teenage years. And they asked me, do you think God exists? And at that time, I kind of had what I felt was a more evolved understanding of God. I just didn't immediately refute it. Right. I was an immediate atheist. I was anti-theist in some ways. But I said, if you take a canvas, a white canvas, and untouched canvas, and you take a group of billions of people who have no common understanding of God, but they all have kind of an understanding of God, and they were to throw a cup of paint randomly and cover their eyes and throw without looking at anyone else or anything else, and they were able to throw this cup of paint onto a canvas. Some would miss the canvas completely, some would hit the canvas and it would smear a bit, and it would coalesce into a single picture. In other words, whether you believe in supernaturalism or not.
So you're talking about an average. You're talking about an average of a global...
Well, if you want to completely simplify the...
I'm just trying to understand what you mean by this. Does that approximately eclipse...
The concept of poeticism completely escapes you. The concept of a metaphor completely escapes you because for you it's either materialist or it doesn't. I'm
not immune to metaphor, and I think they work great in poems, but what I'm trying to establish is some clarity here.
There is a unification of cultural norms. There is a unification of everything else. It's what allow things to change. The recent marriage equality ruling, it's because a majority of us change, because our media, because internet has combined, they've seen images of army, people from the Marines meet each other and two men kissing and that goes viral. And then they see Caitlyn Jenner and they say, wow, these are actually people. And a lot of them hate on it, but a lot of them react. And then there's a dialogue. And then they see that these are people. And then Barack Obama says something about his kids and their friends having same-sex parents and things like that. And the internet combines us. So someone in Uganda who is dying because they're homosexual and they're going to be executed because of it, can then look online in private, someone who's hiding from their current government in private and see that in America or in somewhere else in the UK or somewhere else in the globe, is expressing themselves openly and that there's change happening everywhere else. That is a zeitgeist. That is, we are all moving together in different ways, but we are all moving to common ideas all at once. So the zeitgeist
I disagree.
exists.
I don't think we are
The
moving.
zeitgeist exists.
I first of all don't agree that we're all moving in the same direction at once. Clearly that's not the case. Clearly it's not the case that we're all moving in the same direction at once. Clearly the way some people think is diametrically opposed to the way other people think. And they're moving in opposite directions. They're moving in the same direction, moving in opposite directions. So my question is, what is this unified conjecture you're talking about? I don't see it. I don't, we're not all moving in the direction of being happy with gay marriage. We're not all moving in the direction of being happy with children out of wedlock. You name an issue, abortion, whatever, any emotive topic, any huge emotive topic, terrorism, religionism, extremism, whatever, blah, 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 so on and so forth. You'll find large swaths going in opposing directions. So I'm not sure that we're all moving towards this singular goal. I don't see that to be the case, not at this point, at least.
I posit that due to a historical shift that has existed since the Enlightenment period, and even before that, ideas of secularism, atheism, tradition.
The Enlightenment was a great start, and something bad happened along the way, and everything that they espoused fell apart.
Give me some room to posit my final final summation. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Some final summation.
Yes,
so, given the precedent, given the tradition, which I believe is counter to your point, that it kind of appeals to a mainstream definition, Webster's dictionary, if you will, as a metaphor,
very vanilla.
manifest.
Sure.
If we appeal to tradition that exists since the Enlightenment period, and even before that in different forms, whether it was in Buddhism, whether it was in secular Judaism, whether it was in Greek mythology,
Buddhism's not secular.
which has Greek mythology, which argued against the existence of gods, atheism, different forms of which has evolved over time and convalesced into the Enlightenment period, which has become different forms of humanism and ethical culture. And these have been considered religion not only by the adherents, who've had all the trappings of religion, collectivist symbols and ideas, but it has evolved over time. The government itself, Supreme Court rulings have agreed with it.
We've talked about
Laws have agreed with it. The people themselves have agreed with it, that this is a religion. The definitions themselves by philosophers, by academics, by sociologists.
Not all of them. There are exceptions.
By scholars.
They don't all agree.
Who study
They don't all
religion.
agree.
Sorry, just give me a second. So, all of this combined shows a clear and defined evolution of the word religion, clear and defined evolution of the word secular, and shows that not only can religion be secular and has been in many different forms and has been acknowledged as such, but these terms are evolving. These terms are changing. And those philosophers who are on the cutting edge of these studies of world religions are positing this fact. And whether you like it or not, the term religion is changing. It's no longer set to these antiquated views of what religion is. Despite your desires, despite your intentions, it's changing. Whether you like it or not, the idea of religion is changing, for better or for worse. And we are also seeing that secular, worldly, of this world.
Actually, I'd like to interject because I
have a very final point, and then I'll let you take the stage.
Okay.
And we are saying that this may be the best place, and I've said this before, the best place that religion can go. Reformation, becoming secular, its adherents becoming secularist. This may be where religion needs to go, and I argue that it is. I posit that it is, and many people agree with me. Both court, and you would disagree, but its adherents, philosophers, academics all agree with me. This is where religion needs to go, and this is where religion is going, whether you like it or not.
We actually agreed on this point in previous podcasts. We agreed on the point of inevitability of the secularization of religion, if you recall. I agree that given enough, and in fact the way I said it, to paraphrase myself, was given enough time, religions like Christianity are effectively going to de-Christianize themselves to the point of being meaningless. And so yes, I agree with you, Shea, that we are in the midst of a chasm. We are in the midst of a transition where religions are inherently secularizing themselves, and so we're we're in kind of a unique position in history, I think, and actually it's a blessed position to be in. We're at a point that is unique compared to centuries and millennia before us. So yes, I agree with you that the trend of secularizing religion is going to continue, and it's only going to snowball and gain momentum and inertia. I just don't like the convolution of terms. As this process continues, we're going to see Christians become less and less Christianic. We're going to see Satanists become less and less satanic. We're going to see Islam and Muslims become less and less Muslim and Islamic. We're going to continue to see this trend of religions vacate and evacuate themselves. And so at some point, we're going to have to draw a line in the sand and say this is no longer a religion, or, as you would like to see, we'll have to refine and redefine the term itself.
Let the religious...
But I would say that just in the same sense that alchemy became chemistry, as you said so eloquently earlier, we're going to do the same thing with religion. But it's just that we're in kind of a gray area at this point, and we're not really... we can't really say one way or the other. We're in a unique position in history. We're in a transformative position. But at some point, we're going to come up with a new word for these things. We're not going to call them religion anymore. Religion is going to become an antiquated term like alchemy, and we're going to come up with a revised way of defining these vacated and vacuous religions.
I feel like the true meaning is merely finding itself, and that's all. And it's just adapting to our time. It's evolving. And it's just like a secular atheist to define the religious. Let the religious define the religious. Let the religionist define the religion.
Let anybody clear thinking make a definition of terms.
And and a lot of those in religion may end up becoming clear thinking, much to your dismay.
No, don't be condescending.
That's not condescending.
Don't be incendiary. I would like to see, of course I want to see these people become clear thinking. Not to my dismay.
Excellent.
Hey man, great conversation.
Hey, we have a difference in opinion, my friend. But we agree that reason, above all, should be the primary ultimacy. Is that not a point of contention?
I will stand to that to my last breath.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks, Shea.
Okay, so I have two guys on the line from Anagnorisis, the keyboardist Samuel Hartman and Zach Denham, the guitarist. It's definitely a pleasure to have you guys on. How are you doing?
I'm well. We're doing great. We really appreciate being on the podcast. Thank you guys so much for having us.
Yeah, of course. We've been... I followed your work for some time, and we actually used some of your music on a previous episode, and we knew that we had to bring you guys on. I like what you guys are bringing to the table musically. I like the robustness of the sound, and it seems like influences come from several directions, but generally it seems like a kind of atmospheric... within like a framework of brutality that you guys are delivering to the table. It's a mix of elements for sure, musically. And topically, I want to kind of dig into that to see where you guys are at. But the first question would be, how long have you guys been active, and what's kind of the origination, the genesis of your project, and what you guys are bringing to the table now?
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of take that first. The band has been around with the name for over a decade. It started with a guy named Austin Lunn in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places. He started it 2002, 2003. And it was really just sort of a solo project that he was doing. The name sort of fit a lot of the ideals that he was working with, a lot of the lyrical themes. And when he moved to Louisville, Kentucky, he started to sort of assemble a lineup for like a live show and sort of a live band. And so he brought on our now vocalist, but at the time was a bass player, Zach Kerr, brought a drummer into the mix, and then about a year later, they got Zach Denham, who's on the line with us, to play guitar. And at that point, the style had changed a little bit, and it started to really kind of get going. And then when I was brought into the fold, that was right before our first full-length Over the Trees came out. So it really just started as kind of a solo project, one guy doing his thing, and then turned into a live band. And from there, we've done, 2 full lengths and 2 EPs, and our sound has changed pretty drastically over the last 8 years or so. I mean,
Sure.
Over the Trees came out 2007, and then we did Beyond All Light in 2013. So
Yeah.
I mean, that was a long time, but we had a lot of lineup changes, and the style changed quite a bit too.
So I was going to ask you about Beyond All Light, because I've really been giving a lot of listen to this, and this is your most recent release. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I notice lyrically, it seems like there's definitely some satanic overtones. There's an anti-theistic current that rests in the lyrical approach to the music. Would you say there's a spiritual approach to the music? And by spiritual, I mean, is there a religious conviction? Is there a political baseline that has served as a foundation for the expression of the band? Do you guys have a uniform or collective intention spiritually when it comes to this project?
Yeah, I think I can kind of take that, Sam.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we have talked about a lot is, what does it mean to call ourselves a black metal band? And one of the things that we feel like defines the genre is some type of anti-Christian, sentiment throughout the whole music, like lyrically and also somewhat in spirit, I guess you could say, in the music. But at the same time, I do feel like it's necessary to point out with the lyrics, especially for Beyond All Light, there's a lot of personal reflection based on Zach Kerr's upbringing and, I guess really his whole life. And in parts of, I think, everybody's life, if you grew up anywhere in the United States, or at least most places in the United States, you have this immense pressure to succumb to this Christian theology wherever you are. And I think maybe at some point in our lives, we all question, whether or not that's the right path, or whether or not that was the path that we should be on. And maybe that happened when we were really young, or maybe it happened after, some big issue in our life. So the Beyond All Light talks about some of the, I guess you could say, the spiritual topics, but in a way where I guess you could say Zach was very vulnerable. I don't want to speak too much for him, but in certain parts of his life, just like everybody else's, he was vulnerable and he would question certain things. And I don't think any of us in Anagnorisis would consider ourselves spiritual Satanists or theistic Satanists or anything like that. So we're really kind of bringing those points up in a way where, I guess in a time of doubt where we thought we needed some type of outside, deity, whether that's the Christian God or, some type of Luciferian, entity. It was kind of out of desperation, I guess you could say. And then also sometimes just, for lack of a better word, raping some of the kind of powerful elements from some of the kind of theistic Satanist sects or, currents or whatever you want to call them. So there's not anything that we would stand behind as far as like we're very, very spiritual Satanist or anything like that. And as far as what's traveled throughout all of our material is really just kind of this hatred and disdain, to the right-wing kind of Christian theology that we feel defines black metal, as far as like the fight against that.
Yeah, and we've always been, I think, one tenet that has tied us together is we've always been very vocal about our identity as atheists. And, I think atheism and Satanism can often overlap. But we've been very clear to illustrate that, like, what we do doesn't just need to be, like, needlessly hateful, but critical of religion, particularly Christianity, with a purpose behind that. And so, we try to post a lot of stuff on Facebook, about where religion intersects with different parts of the world and of life that causes a lot of problems. And we try to show that, like, atheism and secular humanism and even Satanism to an extent can be a positive way to deal with that as opposed to a more negative way.
Yeah, I noticed in the lyrical content, especially what I pulled from Beyond All Light, I noticed there was a kind of a pull to represent the individual as God, almost like an anti-hero's call to like an expression of spiritual empowerment that lies within the self. So, are you saying that your kind of religious beliefs or your beliefs towards religion kind of shines through with this idea of self-worship? This is typical of say like LaVeyan Satanism and things like that. Are you saying that holds true in the lyrical expression or the topical expression that that resides within the project's emphasis?
I mean, I think part of that feels just a little awkward to me. I like your description in a lot of ways of what you're picking up there, but one thing that feels awkward is I think it's pretty fair to say that all of us in Anagnorisis just simply don't like religion, and we don't. I guess you could call Satanism a religion, but we don't look at it that way. And worshiping ourselves, I guess, yeah, maybe that somebody could say that, but we're not looking at it as we're worshiping ourselves. We're just putting ourselves above a god. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for us to have a god. So, in our opinion, so the stuff that I think that you were picking up there, one thing that can be kind of confusing is that in Beyond All Light, there are passages that almost hint or even blatantly kind of talk about some type of entity in a way, or, some spiritualism or something. But I think it's important to contextualize those passages within the whole story. And essentially the story of Beyond All Light is in a lot of ways kind of a survival story, like realizing that somebody else is not going to lend you a hand, a god or a deity of some sort. So
it's almost like a diversification, diversifying from this religious kind of dominating force that is inherent in a lot of religious paths.
Yeah, and I think Sam, he mentioned secular humanism. That feels the most, it feels like the most accurate description of where we are, because it's very non-religious to say that. I mean, at least it feels like it, So I know we're dealing with a lot of connotative differences here between, jargon that we all use in different,
Sure.
areas, but still, any type of religion, whether it's, some type of Luciferian, thing or whatever, like worshiping and all of those kind of religious terms, ritual, all that kind of stuff, we will use in certain circumstances. But as far as like what we, I think, believe on a daily basis, that doesn't necessarily describe us very well. I think Sam would probably agree with that.
So what do we have coming down the pipe from your project? And is there any more recordings that be after Beyond All Light? What's the next recording project that we can see coming from you guys?
Well, Sam, you want me to take that, or you?
Well, the wheels of Anagnorisis sometimes move slower, and sometimes they move faster.
Sure.
And we are working on a follow-up album to Beyond All Light, and we're very excited about it. There's not much more that I can really say beyond that. Not because I'm trying to be secretive, but just because it's still kind of up in the air what we want to do. I mean, like I said, we changed our style and our whole approach drastically from the first full length to the second. And we really have a high standard when it comes to the music that we release and the artwork and the lyrics and everything else. And so we're taking our time, to be perfectly honest, to decide what we want it to sound like, what we want the production to be like, who we want to be on the album. We lost our drummer last year that was with us, Chris Smith, and so we've been using a live drummer for the time being. And really just the whole concept behind it. Is it going to be another concept album? Is there going to be different sections of different things? How are we going to do it on, one medium vinyl versus, compact disc, etc.?
Sure.
So we are working on a follow-up album, but we don't have a lot of specifications for it. But we do have, we got a show coming up in Louisville that we're excited about pretty soon. And then we're also going to be doing another Midwestern East Coast tour in the fall with our friends in this band called Immortal Bird.
Okay.
It's a good black metal band from Chicago.
And then the pinnacle of that tour, or really that tour, is based out of our travels to Shadow Woods Festival, which is a festival in Pennsylvania that we were asked to play, and that tour is really based around that. So there's a lot of really exciting bands playing at that. If you haven't checked that out, you should definitely
it's some really, really cool black metal bands, also doom and just all kinds of weird stuff, and it's at this like sort of outdoor festival in the woods basically. So black metal of course lends itself. Yeah, it should be really fun. So we're really excited to play that. It's a 2-day fest, and
awesome. Sort
of building a tour around that, and just we always try to push the envelope on the live show, make it bigger and better. Zach and I are both big gear nerds, so we get a lot out of the live show as much as we do the recording too.
Awesome. So where should we guide listeners who are interested in your music? I have Anagnorisis.com. Is that the best place? That's kind of like the main site for you guys?
Yeah, that's perfect. And let me just give a point on that too, because we have some sort of audience that all of our music on there is free with the exception of Beyond All Light. And if you look hard enough on the internet, you could find Beyond All Light for free as well. Sure. And that's fine. We actively encourage people to listen to our music by whatever means they choose to do
necessary,
including and we encourage torrenting and downloading. And it's not pirating because it's not illegal, because we're giving people the rights to do it.
That's a very awesome progressive sort of attitude to have.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And that's one thing that I am extremely passionate about with this project, and I don't often get a lot of space to talk about it. So I just wanted to use this opportunity to say we actively encourage people to listen, download, and share our music. If you want to pay for it, fucking awesome. We appreciate it. And that money goes to our merchandise and our tours and all the stuff that we do. But what's important to us is that people listen and hopefully get something out of what we're so passionate about. And money shouldn't stand in the way of that.
Awesome. That's an excellent position to take. So we have Anagnorisis, a band that represents the adversarial viewpoint and represents a progressive standpoint and a multitude of philosophical and political views that run the gamut, but definitely a force to be reckoned with in the black metal tapestry on a global level. It has been a pleasure to have you guys on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. If there's anything else you guys want to say.
Thank you for this audience and the great questions and conversation.
Yeah, we appreciate the thought that you guys put into the podcast and the good topics that you get into. So thank you so much. Hail Satan.
Thank you. Hail Satan. Take care. Thank you for listening and lending your ears to the Deferred Gnosis podcast.
Please use the contact information in the description below. You may reach us at deferredgnosis.com. You may also find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, etc. Or reach us by email at deferredgnosis@gmail.com.
Please send us your topic ideas, suggestions, things you might want us to discuss. Help us carve out a niche of truth, reaching some ground just on the edge of the fringe. And if you're a musician, a writer, poet, artist of any kind, please feel free to send us a link to your work, audio or otherwise. We'd be more than happy to plug your work and possibly interview you for the show.
But remember, we have a penchant for the subversive, so the darker the better.
Thank you for listening.
And highest cheers from Deferred Gnosis.
Ave, hails, as above, so below.
Temple set up
he approached me. We kind of had a discussion, and he had fuck this.
You know, he just kind of said, "Do it," and I was like, "Fuck it, dude. I think I'm pretty down."
Fuck it, dude.
Fuck it, bro.
All right, let's do it again.
Whoa! Woo! That was fucking fire, bitch.